All right, so go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Krystal Teale. I wrote the book Time Voyage, A Journey to Colonial America.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your book. What's it about, and what were some of its inspirations?
My book is a book that's trying to help to teach children more about American history. So the book starts out with a teacher who never really thought she was going to be a teacher, and then she gets introduced to this what kind of like a groundskeeper maintenance gentleman who has developed a time machine. And she's like, oh, well, cool, now I can use this time machine. Maybe we can, show the kids the history instead of just talking about the history. And so they create a time travel club that they go to all these different historical places to get the experience.
So what was the inspiration for this work?
I've always been like the history person. Since I was a little kid, I've always loved history. And then I became a teacher in 2014, and I saw how social studies education is kind of not all there. Like it's kind of on the back burner for, compared to math and English. And so kids usually think it's boring. So I wanted to bring a way to make it fun for kids while they're also learning the actual historical events.
So you use the book in order to teach people about the history that maybe they aren't getting in their otherwise education.
Right. The book is geared towards grades like 5 through 8, and elementary history is not really taught. Like most kids, you don't get history class until like 8th grade, high school. Like I teach juniors right now. And so I wanted a way to give younger audiences more to build upon so that they already have an understanding by the time they get to me in 11th grade.
So, what's your favorite thing about the book, about your book?
I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I really enjoy like Doctor Who and things like that. So the time travel element is something I'm a pretty big fan of. Couldn't make it like the TARDIS, but it's close.
Okay, so what were some of the major events that you focused on and you wanted to cover in your book?
So I hope to eventually make it a series. So what I did was I took the standards for 5th and 8th grade U.S. history, and I just started at the beginning with Unit 1, which is Colonial America. And so the topics that are focused on in the book are like exploration, reasons why the English wanted to explore North America, and into the individual colonies, splitting it up, northern colonies, middle colonies, and southern colonies, and going into things like Jamestown, the Massachusetts Bay, those kind of things. And each chapter has its own, or each colony has its own chapter about their adventures and who they meet and what they talk about in each of those colonies.
Interesting. So you didn't it sounds like you didn't focus on the stereotypical Revolutionary War and just covering the dates and stuff. It sounds like you're diving more into the history of it.
Yeah, very much so. A very famous historian, David McCullough, said history is human. So I wanted to bring that aspect into the book and make it human, because history is about the people who lived before us. What did they do? How did they live to get us to the point where we are now? And so I wanted to try to put that in the book to help kids understand that and build that foundation for when they become civic-minded adults.
So they're actually thinking about previous things that have happened and going, this sounds familiar.
Right.
That book I was reading.
And eventually I do hope to make it a series. So the second one would focus on the revolution, but again, I would like to focus more on the people as opposed to dates and things like that.
I mean, everybody's been in that history class where the teacher just goes, well, you got to remember the dates. You got to remember the dates, and they drive that into you. But that's not like, I've definitely found as I've gotten older, I've understood the history of the situation, like things that play into each other and
Mm-hmm.
create the situation. Nothing happens overnight, and it always gets to
No.
a point.
And it's different based on who you talk to too, because perspective is very important. So I try to add that in as well, just to give the kids an understanding of, just like you and I are talking right now, well, these people talk too, and this was the outcome of that talk.
That's definitely true, because you never know what exactly took place or who was talking to who and that spurred it on.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's conversations that you have that aren't recorded in the history books that end up
Mm-hmm.
being the most pivotal, right?
Right.
Anyways, so you said you were always interested in history
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. Did you have the history teacher that pounded home the dates?
I did. I had the stereotypical coach as your history teacher who just pounded in the dates, and me and my tiny little historian head was like, but there's more. But there's more, so there's so much more. And so I vowed I would never do that to my own students, and I hope I haven't. To be determined, you'd have to ask them.
We'll do a massive poll afterwards, okay?
They would love to participate.
So you drove this book from that experience and you went into history from that experience, and you're trying to make it more human. Do you in your classroom do like the ones everybody's seen on Facebook with the props and stuff?
I have, but I don't do the props. The children do the props.
Oh.
I teach dual credit AP, or dual credit in AP US History, and we did a constitutional convention simulation where they had to, debate the topics of the Constitution and decide whether they were going to adopt it or not. And they made wigs out of paper. It was
That's
great.
kind of awesome, right?
It was fantastic. And they would pass the wigs around because they only made 2 of them. So whoever's turn it was to talk, they would just pass it around and just plop it on their head.
And they'd be like, now I'm George Washington, or now I'm Benjamin Franklin.
Yep. Now it's my turn. I have the wig. So they tend to make the props.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So from that, do you think they get more involved into this history and they want to learn more about it?
Yes, definitely, because it gets them thinking more about it. Well, if I was this person and I was in this position, would I think the same way he does? Would I do the same thing he did? Would I want the same thing they did? And it gets them thinking because they're doing it. The more they do things, that more hands-on lessons, the more they get to thinking, well, would I have made that decision? Would I, think or feel the same way that person would? I do, during our World War II lesson, I do a lesson where I give them a little card. And on that card, I break it down into scientists, generals, like military personnel, and presidential advisors. And I tell them what each person really thought about the Manhattan Project. And they have to look at that and decide, do I agree with this person? Do I not agree with this person? What advice would I give the president in that situation? And it helps them to really see, they had to make a decision like that. What would I have done if I was there? And it really helps them to understand the history as well, because it's not just the dates. It's not rote memorization. And they get those experiences that they can then tie back to on standardized testing, for example. They can be like, oh, we did that thing, and oh yeah, now I know it, that kind of thing.
Well, and then it's not just about the test either, right?
Right.
It's about building that foundation for them being critical thinkers and evaluating life going forward, right?
Right. And that's what I'm trying to do, is help them to be those, good citizens who have the critical thinking skills and can look at what's happening in the world today and make good choices for our future and their future, hopefully through what I do.
And one small part of that is the book, right? It lays that foundation for the younger grades
That
so
is
that they
my
start.
goal.
Yeah. So You talked about some of the major events. Which one did you find the hardest to like research or to really dive into and present in your book?
That's tough. Anne Hutchinson was difficult. She, was expelled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony and, went on, I believe it's to Rhode Island. And so that one was a little tricky on how to, because it's a very important story. How do I fit that in? Do I put it in the Massachusetts Bay one? Do I put it in, the Rhode Island chapter? Where does it fit? And how do you tell that? Because it's not something that they really teach in school. I mean, her name is mentioned, but they don't really talk about what she did and what she stood for and why she got kicked out of the colony, which was basically she didn't go along with what they said that she needed to believe. And so she was expelled. And so that was a story that I definitely knew I wanted to put in. It was just tricky on how to fit it in and make it adaptable to, a younger audience.
Yeah, because it sounds like it touches a lot more. I'll be honest, I'm not very familiar with with her story, but it does sound like that would be very difficult to find a specific area to put that into and have her fit into.
Yeah, because it's kind of, she fits into two sides. Like she was holding meetings in her house, talking about things the church didn't want her to talk about, and it's like, how do you present that to a 12-year-old? And where in the story does it fit? And so it was something I needed to tell, but how to tell it.
Okay, so how did you ultimately figure out how to portray that in the story?
I believe I put her in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the conflict of, some people were getting kicked out because they didn't agree with what the, powers that be wanted. So I think in the book she is in the Massachusetts Bay side, but it shows, people should have their own viewpoints and have their own say. And if you don't believe in something, speak up and tell what you believe. And I believe that's how I spun it, but I went through several revisions.
Editing, right?
Editing was not my friend.
Talked to quite a few writers, and editing is definitely not the best part.
No.
What did you find your editor was often saying? What were some of the issues that they were having? Was it just the usual, well, this doesn't make sense in this context sort of thing?
Yeah.
Or was it?
It was really mostly that.
Right.
No, I didn't get any like major rewrites. It was mostly like, well, this doesn't really make sense right here. Can we rephrase it? That kind of thing.
Okay. Now, did you do this work independently? So you published it independently?
I did. Oh. I wrote it all out, and then I found an editor and sent it off. And the whole process has taken about 10 years from beginning of idea to getting it out. And I really just took everything I had, all the ideas, and sat down over the summer last year and just put it on paper.
Okay. So. And then finally got it edited and everything like that.
Yep, and it was released October 1st.
Oh, so it's real recent. Well, congratulations on your first published work.
Thank you.
That's always a difficult part. I have also self-published, and it's difficult to go through that whole process and then publish it out there and hope that everybody kind of likes it, or
right.
Opinion even on it would be sometimes even better.
That's what I'm running into. Is please give me an opinion. Please just tell me what you think, good or bad. I can take it. I just want to know, what people think about it.
Yep. Just give me some feedback. What did you like? What did you not like? Right.
What can I do better? That kind of thing.
Okay. So is the main character, is she based on anybody in particular, or is this just a manifestation of frustration?
I hadn't intended upon it, but it appears that the main character, the teacher, is based on myself, from what I hear. Several of my students have read through it because I have a copy in my classroom, and they're like, so Miss, is this you? this is you, right? This is definitely you. So apparently she's me. I
Okay.
had not intended on that, but that's apparently the route my brain went.
A great philosopher said that we with art portray ourselves, and so it's it happens. It's something maybe about yourself that you're portraying. Maybe you don't even realize it. Maybe you just you put it down on the paper, and now it's
I hadn't realized it, and they're like, Miss, she time travels and she goes and teaches kids about history in history. She's you. Okay, I'll take it.
You're like, okay, there are worse things to be in life, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Then you could go the other way too. You could also go, hang on, don't tell anybody because the time machine's hidden.
I have like a TARDIS, the Doctor Who time machine on top of the cabinet, and I tell him, if you don't behave, I'm not letting you use my TARDIS. I'm sorry.
So, what are your plans for the series? You said you had more books that are planned.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the major historical events that you really want to cover, and what are some that you're kind of hesitant to touch on?
Well, again, my goal is to take the curriculum and just kind of go unit by unit because it's broken down by eras in history. So the first one was colonial. The second one is like the causes and consequences of the American Revolution, which I think is extremely important. So that one's definitely needed, especially with the America 250 coming up. I think it would be very important. America turns 250 in 2026.
Oh,
so,
awesome.
Yep. And so that I could, definitely help add to, because I'm expecting, I wasn't alive in 1776, but I'm expecting significant pomp and circumstance. I'm a member of Daughters of the American Revolution, and we are heavily involved in the America 250. So I think there's definitely going to be a lot going on. So that would add to more understanding for the younger folk. And then after that, it's building the country, which is going to be complicated because those documents are hard for an adult to understand. So that's going to be a challenge.
Federation or Declaration of Independence? Which one's the one that you think is harder?
Articles of Confederation, Constitution, all of it.
Okay.
So Declaration would fall into the Revolution book.
Right. Yeah.
And then Articles of Confederation probably as well. But the Constitution, I know our 8th graders struggle with understanding the parts of the Constitution because the wording is just so difficult. So that's going to be a challenge for me to figure out how to make it make sense, I guess you could say, a little bit better. And then the 8th grade curriculum ends at Reconstruction. So all of that leading up to the Civil War, I think, is going to be a challenge for me to write as well. All of the compromises and the conflict and the problems that led to this splitting of our country, and the things that are just difficult topics that add to all of that,
Well, and I've noticed this about that era of history. As you put it, compromises. That's a really good way to sum up pre-Civil War era. Is there were so many compromises made. They just kept doing it, and they kept it, so it literally became they're just kicking the can further and further down the road until it became like we can't avoid this anymore.
Yeah, there's no going back now. We've compromised ourselves out, So that's going to be, there's tough topics to come, certainly, and trying to adapt those to where it is historically accurate and age appropriate for that younger audience. It's going to be.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's going to be a challenge.
One of the things that I think you've already mentioned that's really difficult with going over history and presenting it is getting people to understand the different time period, that it was completely different. things we do now wouldn't have been found acceptable at that time period,
Right.
and things in 20 years that we do now, they would think is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
Who knows what this could be?
Yeah, and I mean, to put it in a modern perspective that they can understand, but keep that real history, it's going to take some deep thought.
Take some finagling. Well, and I think you got the right way with the way it sounds like your writing is focusing more on the human aspects of it and the internal parts, and getting people to really look at it from that person's perspective.
Right.
That's good storytelling right there.
And luckily, we have such a wealth of historical documents that have been digitized, so I don't have to go all the way to Washington and go to the Library of Congress to find those. I used a lot of primary source documents in my research for the first one, and so luckily, there's a wealth of information that I can pull from that are those people's words, that are them expressing their feelings to their uncle, their cousin, whoever, you know, in their letters or even in their diaries to themselves. So that's definitely a positive aspect, is they wrote it down for us.
Issues that they personally had, or the things that were going on that they felt, or the conversation that they had that nobody knew about with a loved one.
Right.
Because
I mean,
nobody brings work ever, right?
Oh, they would never now. No, nobody in politics keeps a diary nowadays. But we can go
that's
back.
a touchy subject.
Yeah. Well, then of course now we have social media, so that's a whole different ballgame of primary sources.
And it's always interesting to dive in and actually see what the people thought, because it's too easy to write them off for the time period. It's too easy to be like, well, whatever. It's just not right. Well, yeah, it wasn't right. And then you go in and you find out that, you know, they thought
didn't
it wasn't
think so
right
either. Yeah. And it's also interesting to look at perspectives. You can look at a letter that Thomas Jefferson writes to, you know, James Madison. We know they're very good friends. That's going to be a little bit more, I guess you could say, like off the cuff or like casual. And then you can see a letter that he wrote on the exact same topic to somebody that maybe he didn't like so much. And it's the same information, the same topic, but completely different idea because of who he's presenting to. Like, you could probably believe he feels a little bit more comfortable with Madison than the other guy. So, you know, it's a catch-22 sometimes too, if you're looking at just one document, because, well, they have a whole different story that they're telling their friend versus, you know, their lawyer colleague.
What is the actual belief here, or what is the what do they hold firm and close to their heart versus what do they publicly say, which we all know we never do that now, right?
Of course not. No, we're much more evolved.
No, we're not the same people. No.
We're not human just like them. Of course not.
No, and that's what I love from works such as yours, is it does bring that. It makes people realize there's more to the story than maybe they read in a history book or they learned in history class. Because I've definitely had moments like that where I've read more into a subject and been like, oh my gosh, there was so much more going on than I remember in my history class.
Yeah, and there's so much to it as well that most history classes, they simply just don't get to it, or they don't have time to get to it. I mean, I'm struggling with that myself. Yeah. I teach a tested subject and we have a deadline. You've got to be done before testing, and testing is April and we started in August. So, I mean, there's just simply not enough time to tell all the stories either. So if I can provide a puzzle piece that'll help fit those stories together that they can read on their own time, or they can have, you know, circle time on carpet like they do in elementary school and maybe get a little bit more in. My goal is to help bridge the gap.
Yeah, give them that information.
Hopefully.
It's a very admirable goal. I hope to see you again for maybe another book, talking about your next book. That would be great.
That would be great. I'm working on chapter 1. That's as far as I've gotten so far.
What is that famous saying? The journey of 1,000 steps starts with one chapter, right?
Yep. I've got 1 chapter and it's not even done.
All good. Okay, so I like to finish these out with a couple of what I call the lightning round questions, just quick
Okay.
answers to questions, just to let people get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay. So just answer as quick as you can.
Okay.
What's your favorite food?
Barbecue.
Barbecue. Okay. Least favorite food?
Sardines.
I can see that. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
Purple. What's your least favorite color?
Green.
Oh, that's my favorite. Oh.
I don't know. I just pictured like a pea green color. It's not very
Okay.
appealing to me.
What's your favorite thing to wear on a cold day?
Hoodies.
Hoodies. Oh, heck yeah. What is something that you've always wanted?
To visit the Library of Congress.
I second that. We should make that happen.
I went to Washington. I did not get a chance to visit that, nor the Smithsonian. So can I add the Smithsonian to that list too, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then what's the favorite thing that you currently own?
Favorite thing that I currently own. I have a book of World War II trivia that was my grandfather's. And he's kind of the reason why I got into history. We would sit there and like read through it all the time. So I would say that or his atlas from the 50s.
Okay. That's pretty cool. All right, and I kind of know what I might get as an answer to this one, but if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
Does time travel count as a superpower?
I kind of figured that was the one you were going to say, but yes.
Okay, then if time travel counts, I choose time travel.
Okay. Would you want to go more into the past or more into the future?
Past, of course.
A little bit more predictable that way, right?
Well, yeah, but I don't know if you're familiar. There's a British author by the name of Jodie Taylor, and I've immersed myself in her series. It's called the St. Mary's or the Chronicles of St. Mary's, and it's a organization funded by the University of Thirsk, who time travels to different eras and they document what happened, like visually, like video cameras and such, so that they can then report back and compare to the historical record of what really did occur. And so if I could be on that team, that would be amazing.
Sounds kind of interesting. All right, so I'm going to give you the final word. Go ahead and give one more plug for your book and where they can find your book at.
My book is called Time Voyage, Discovering Colonial America. It can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And we do have an Instagram called The Classroom Time Travelers.
They can follow you on Instagram.
Yes, I'm learning Instagram. The children are teaching me.
See, they've got something to teach you too.
Yep. They said I need to make TikToks, and I tried to make TikToks for Star Review last year, and they said that they were cringy. So I don't know about TikToks, but I'm learning the Instagram.
Hey, it's all good. Got to start somewhere, right?
Got to start somewhere.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.
Okay.